There's a lot of mental health conversations this year in particular. I feel like it just tracks with the market.
You really?
Market's down. We're all sad. Mental health year. And market's back up. How many doors you got? Because what I did was I looked at the past and I was like, those two girls actually hated being with them. But they were really hot and I ignored it entirely, in the period of the time that I was with them,
That's as honest as it comes.
Yeah. No one wants to hear some Ivy League kid working at a bunch of FANG companies.
Yeah.
But if I am the son of immigrants who grew up in the back of a restaurant, who was a child laborer until he was 18, that is much more relatable and much more of a story that we can talk about.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Fit and Frugal podcast. I am your host, Tani Lin. You can find me on IG at Tanisaurus. Today I'm with my friend Nelson Lin.
Howdy.
Howdy. All the way from Austin, Texas. Yeah. So following up on this morning's conversation, why did you quit drinking? What was the decision?
It's a segue. If you think about it, there is always like a cost-benefit trade-off, right? And so then the question is, why do a lot of us drink, right? If you look at the con side, typically there's a lot of risks involved with your health. They've come out with a bunch of studies, at least in the last few years, where it's like there's actually no benefit medically if you're under the age of 40. And it takes not that much alcohol to actually be detrimental to you. So you have all these side effects, that give you more anxiety, that hurt your health, but mentally and socially in some ways. So then what is the biggest benefit that you get from alcohol, which is the feeling of happiness for a short period of time that you borrow usually from tomorrow. And there's also the benefit of being a social lubricant, that you can interact with people that you would normally not want to or be able to without the help of alcohol.
Yeah.
I have the benefit of being loud, annoying, and craving attention all the time. So I don't need the alcohol to talk to complete strangers and feel comfortable in their space.
Yeah.
And so when I did the cost benefit, just for me specifically, obviously everyone else has their own opinions on it. I didn't feel that I needed to keep drinking, especially given that there are these side effects. If you look at the studies, I don't know if you follow Andrew Huberman, he goes over several hours of research on this where it's just this or that. It doesn't really benefit you at the end of the day. So if I can talk to people and I don't want the health benefits or I don't want the detrimental health portion of it, then why bother keep drinking? And so I'm not going to kill the energy though at a wedding if everyone's doing a toast and I'm like, actually, I'm not going to drink. I'm also not going to
be that guy.
Be that guy who's like, oh, I did a conference last year, right? Sarah Con, you were there. I pulled off a 400-person conference. I'm going to drink, I'm going to pound down. And so then there are times that I will, do it, but now I need an occasion rather than people who do it socially, which I don't find the benefit of anymore. And people in particular who do it not socially, in which case then it becomes closer to alcoholism, in my opinion, right? So
the reason why I started with that is because we're having breakfast this morning and it was a follow-up question and then we're like, we gotta go. But then that's something that's been on my mind because it resonates with that, because when you mentioned Saracon, like I got obliterated, like, we all drank way too much. And then that moment when I came back here, I was talking to one of my friends. He's like, hey, how was the conference you went to? I'm like, bro, I was like, I barely made it there. And he was just like, is that like a pattern, right? Yeah. He was like, every time you go to a mastermind or a conference, like, oh, sure. I'm like, yeah. And he was like, do you have problems like talking to me? I'm like, I really don't. So when he said like, you don't have problems like being loud and obnoxious and all that stuff, I'm like, I don't either. Like, why do I drink? And someone else was talking to me. They're like, is it like, a social lubricant? I'm like, I don't think I need social lubricant, to be honest. And it becomes more of like using that to like maybe tolerate spaces where I don't want to be
in the first place, right?
In the first place, and like tolerating conversations that I don't want to be a part of to begin with. Yeah. And without that kind of suppressive mode or whatever, I realize I'm like, fuck, like I am an alcoholic, right? Because that's a pattern of addiction that I have been working on since last year. So a good like 6 months of really cutting back and like observing my behaviors every time I drink. Like, what is the pattern? Like, I lose an entire day. I'm like hungover as hell. And I was like, and for what? right?
And for what? Exactly.
Yeah.
And the worst case scenario is when someone else who is already proficient at speaking and being comfortable with strangers all of a sudden now needs alcohol as a crutch because you associate it with the good feelings of being in that space.
Yeah.
That it feels like if you don't drink alcohol, then how do you talk to this next person? How do you feel comfortable? And they probably could have done it without it, but now they're leaning on the feelings that the alcohol gave them in order to enjoy it. I almost attribute the same thing as like porn addiction, right? When the real thing happens, you don't find as much enjoyment anymore out of it because you're so harnessed into this mindset of this thing that you used as a crutch.
Yeah.
So
it's like an expectation that kind of delineates of your actual reality. Like you're like, how come I'm not having sex like this person that I saw? Right? Like, am I not in the right position or something? Which is kind of funny too, because I believe in that, like heavily addictions is rooted in, what do you think it like kind of stems from?
Daddy issues, being growing up, whatever it is.
Childhood trauma.
I was actually having dinner with an ex-girlfriend last night. She mentioned the same thing about if she used to be alcoholic, but you wouldn't notice it in her. But she's like, the moment I feel sad, the moment I felt something twinge, I'm like, I need a drink. Right. So it's like, what is the trigger that gets you to that point? Yeah. And a lot of people use alcohol because it's an easy legal one that society generally encourages. Yeah. Right. We all know functioning alcoholics, and and at the end of the day, you have to figure out what is the math on, is this providing me benefit? Do I actually enjoy what I'm doing here? And I think eventually the cons outweighed the pros. Yeah.
That's a really logical approach to it because it makes sense, right? Like the principles on how you live your life. It's like most people do want to take those steps to change their life, but they don't really know how. And I didn't realize like how big of an effect that alcohol had to my life, like how codependent I was on it. Because when I looked at my lifestyle in the 20s, I'm like, what was I doing? I was bartending most of my 20s. Right. Right. And most of the gigs that I did, I was at weddings, I was at corporate events. And then it literally is a place where you drink. And like each of those settings, it's not like a natural occurring thing, right? So if you hang out, you network, naturally it's like at bars or at like different restaurant spaces. And that was the lifestyle that I had that I didn't realize like became my identity as someone that drinks for a living. And you know what I mean? And then when I went to college, I'm like, oh, it's normal because all the college kids drank and they were like much younger than me.
And then you went into real estate and everyone else was also like, let's drink at every event, right?
Right. So. And then it kind of became this thing to where I'm like, oh, it's normal. But now when I tell people like, hey, I don't drink, they're like, what happened? I'm like, why is this such a like a social slap in the face that we don't drink? Right. I'm not saying like you do what you want with your life and I'm not going to go into a spiel like, hey, you should stop drinking. Like, do whatever you want. Like, I'm still around people. I'm not going to give you like, here's this 8-page research that I just read this morning on why you should stop drinking. Right. Yeah. Like, we're not there preaching. Yeah. So. But I think within the last like couple months since I had stopped drinking, the conversation is kind of weird. Like, I still go to meetups. I still go to tons of networking events and I just don't drink anymore. Right. And I see like who I am without alcohol.
You're more lucid. You remember names better. Yeah. And sometimes you just come across better, to other investors that you might want to work with in the future. I know there's a certain cachet that comes with it. If I'm trying to raise money and I say like, hey, actually I don't drink, usually I see something turn in their mind where they're like, this person's social, whatever. They might have had this idea of like, you're a young frat boy probably, trying to gather money. But if you say like, actually I don't drink, I have a focus on health. I noticed that there's a perspective shift where someone who might be a possible investor then becomes like, oh, this person's a teetotaler who's very driven for what they're going after. Yeah. And anything like alcohol might be a distraction from that eventual goal of what they want to accomplish. Yeah. And so I've noticed it actually be a benefit when I talk to LP specifically.
That's interesting. Do you feel like you have better output personally, like on your productivity because you stopped drinking or lessen your drinking?
Oh, I'm unproductive all the time, regardless of the alcohol. I think, I don't think not drinking has made me more productive, but I don't think I would be doing as much as I would be if I were drinking and having to recover like the next 2 days, for example. Every day matters, right?
Yeah.
And so if I'm missing out on those opportunities, I wouldn't want to limit myself. I'm going to die one day, right? You're going to die one day.
Yeah.
The cameraman's going to die one day. Everyone here is going to die. Everyone you know is going to die.
Everyone you ever love is going to die.
Everyone you ever loved you is going to die. And everyone they know is going to die.
Yeah.
So why waste it? Recovering from a hangover.
Yeah. And I think when you were talking about like the pattern thing, like it was a trigger for me because every time I'm stressed is because I didn't realize I was living like a normal state of survival burnout that like it became natural because everyone around me was burnt out. We're all overachieving. We're all procrastinating. We're all like anxious as shit. We get nothing done but complain to each other how much we're doing to strive for this like, I don't know. I don't even think it's a pedestal to like really put out there like, oh, like I'm burned out as shit, but like it looks really cool. You know what I'm saying? So when I took an audit at like my circle, I'm like, fuck, like there has to be a better way.
That's actually the same mindset my ex had. I was saying she had to start thinking, okay, why do I want this drink? Take a pause. Am I doing it because I'm like, I enjoy the process of drinking, or am I drinking it because I'm stressed? I just need some way out of feeling stressed. And so I think being conscious of your decisions and being very intentional is like a key part of living life to the max and whatnot. So like speaking of intentionality, like I do believe that it is the easiest coping mechanism for whatever you're going through at the moment, right? Because people aren't really emotionally regulated as well as they should because they're unaware of themselves and whoever they become within that emotional state because they think it's like a permanent state. It's not like a fleeting feeling of like, I feel this in this moment, but realizing that it will pass if they just kind of let it process. This is my year of being sad, the same thing. We would often rather feel numb rather than feel sad. And so we often cope with it in the version of drinking, drugs, women, staying up late at night, playing video games until 3 a.m. until your mom's like, yo, what the fuck? It's everything we can do to feel numb instead of actually having to feel sad. And that kind of takes away from the ability to be conscious and think. Because, if you're bored and you don't want the feeling of sadness, you can pick up a phone at any moment and just say like, actually, I don't want to feel the way I'm feeling. Well, that's all there is. You have TikTok, you have Instagram, you have everything that you could at the palm of your hands to not have to feel. And being intentional is the opposite of that. It's having to embrace like, I actually hate my day today, but it's okay.
Like, why do I feel like shit? Like, I like that. It is because all that free dopamine that people are so constantly unaware of. You know what I'm saying? And I think is there like research on it? I probably should look into it. But how often? Because like for me, I set a timer on my phone to where I limit
I set a timer too. I'm a baby.
Usage.
I need the screen time for myself. And then I gave it to a friend who, and I'm like, don't tell me the code. So
don't tell me the code.
I need like a parent to like manage my life for me, which I'm my own parent at this point, obviously, but it's like, I don't tell me the code. I can't use it between the periods of this hour and this hour. With certain apps allowed, of course. So I think selective consumption is really important because everyone is creating content. Everyone is consuming heavily on social media, right? And the creators that are like, oh, don't consume, like create. But I'm like, what about your friends? Like you still want to be out there on the platforms, right? Like stay connected to your friends. And there is a healthy way around it. It doesn't necessarily have to be like doom scrolling for like, one video leads into like 6 hours. It's a little drastic, but I think it's probably on average, like you go into like a 30-minute binge and you're like, why am I watching food video and like how, See, that's why
noodles are made.
That's why I like Facebook because their algorithm is by far the worst. I only need to scroll for like 5 minutes. I'm like, oh, this sucks. And I can just shut down the app. Whereas when I'm on TikTok, I'm like, game over, all day. So the worse the app that you use, the better chance you can actually leave it. Sorry, Meta, Facebook people, but.
Yeah, Facebook is kind of boring.
It's kind of boring, which is nice because then you have an easier chance getting off of it.
Yeah. Like, so do you go in there with an intention of like what you want to do during that time that you're using social media?
Sometimes. I mean, I make money from it now. So it's one, moderating the group, 2, posting whatever channel
Mm-hmm.
product I have to post.
Mm-hmm.
And then thirdly, checking our KPIs. We have to measure
Mm-hmm.
how the group is growing and how the brand is developing on its own.
Mm-hmm.
And so a key part of that is you have to actually kind of be routine about it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do it every day,
Mm-hmm.
but if you do it every day, it actually boosts the algorithm, which is dangerous.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm at a period where I'm just trying to figure out who can I hire it out to? How can I, expand beyond that?
Yeah.
Because I love the in-person meetings that we do. I love our events, but in order to get people to those in-person events, I have to use the online space to
like your social media presence,
presence, etc.
Because everything comes down to like a number and how many people it reaches. And
right.
Friends of friends sharing content.
Yeah. And so like last month we did a trip to Florida. Great time. Shared strategies, shared feelings, shared goals, visions, nightmares, everything that there is to life besides just making a bunch of money, right?
Yeah.
And so these field trips are a way to sort of gather people together who would otherwise never meet someone that was like them in their community.
Yeah.
A lot of times when they show up, they're like, yeah, I'm the crazy friend who's like looking at buying houses out of state. All my friends are like, well, what are you doing? And they're just like, well, I want something more out of life and I just don't know where to find it. And if you have in-person events for people within a specific subgroup who are very niche or at least very driven for that same reason, it's a beautiful thing when you put all of them together in one space and have them talk about who they are, who they want to be. We don't even have to like facilitate it. We just put them together in the room, put a few guardrails. They do it naturally. Right? And that's like the thing I love most about the group that we made. And also like the people that come out and same thing, with other entrepreneurs when we meet them. But I attribute a lot of that to the online portion of constantly craving validation, trying to increase likes and measuring our KPIs based on that.
Yeah. Which is funny because we are social beings, right? Like we're just meant to be socialized like in an environment. But I think the disconnection kind of happens ironically, like from social media too, is because everything kind of gets like concentrated down to the number of likes of everything you post or whatever.
Yeah, we live in a society,
Yeah, we live in a society where like the million pictures is normal and then like the intention's read wrong or the perception of the intention of the likes is read wrong. Yeah. And there's just so much thought behind that it kind of removes like that organic connection from people to people. Like you can't really
you kind of have to get their attention too.
Yeah.
It's like a Pareto rule. Like 20% of your content should be like the bulk, the meaty stuff, the stuff that's like intuitive and maybe different. But then the 80% that actually attracts people is probably like your dummy, thick meme content that you can draw in people casually. Yeah. And then they're interested in like, I want more. And that's how they get to the 20%. That's the most helpful for them. So,
like the layers of the onions.
The layers of the onions,
yeah. Like outside, it's like, oh, this like goofball that.
Yeah, the social media onions.
Right. Yeah. And like, like we all have real estate in some shape, way, or form as a vehicle to build wealth and all that stuff. But I don't think that is something that we want to talk about all the time. Like sometimes I want to sit there like, how's your mental health today? Yeah. Like that's what I want to talk about. Not like, hey, bro, like how many doors you got,
Yeah.
Like,
there's a lot of mental health conversations this year in particular. I feel like it just tracks with the market.
You really?
Market's down. We're all sad. Mental health year. And market's back up. How many doors you got?
Right.
I bought another thing. Yeah. More debt.
And it's funny to like see that in like an uptrend and downtrend too. Yeah. Because that's, I think, what most people focus on is like, they don't really care about the person behind all of the real estate investing, behind all of like the things that you're doing, right? Yeah. Yeah. Like, what do you think the biggest like mental health thing that we're suffering with is?
I don't know about everyone else. For me, I constantly crave validation. So it's helpful if you're trying to build community, get attention for like a business and contact investors. But it's detrimental, obviously, in its own way. Forming personal relationships is hard, especially if you're being pulled in a bunch of different directions. A lot of insecurities, especially and particularly at night when I'm by myself. And so I think those are like the biggest detrimental things that I run into. But it's also helpful, like as an investor, like validation is important. So I'm extremely cautious, for example, when it comes to like finding projects to invest in, which was helpful because we didn't really buy anything really large in 2022. And so everyone who bought in 2022, they're kind of like, they've lost money to some degree.
Yeah.
If they can hold on to the other side, good for them. But if they didn't get the right type of debt, right? If they have floating rate, for example. So,
all the bridge loans falling apart in commercial.
Yeah. If you're in bridge, you didn't get a cap. If you're buying somewhere that it wasn't Florida in the last year, you're kind of screwed. If you bought in one of the major cities that everyone was talking about, Nashville, Austin, Phoenix, you're kind of screwed.
Why
And
is
so,
that?
well, what happened is most people came in and they thought, hey, the market's been so hot for 2 years. What if I came in and bought also, not realizing that the peak was kind of coming around, or they thought it was the peak and they're like, well, I can still perform and get these numbers that I am underwriting.
Yeah.
So what did they actually underwrite at the end of the day? Well, they were like, rent's up like 15, 20% this year in Phoenix. So I'm going to underwrite 4% growth for the next 2 years and maybe 3%, whatever. And they're like, that's conservative.
Yeah.
You know where Phoenix rent is? It's lower than it was last year.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it's probably going to be flat all the way until 2024 because, we're in a really soft market and the valuation of the building has fallen too.
Yeah.
So now you're at a position where you're like, well, I was trying to hit this market rent and now your market rent is lower than where your target was. And the reason why you had such a high IRR was you were starting at like a sub 4 cap probably on the anticipation that rent would keep going up to outsize and outperform. And so when you sold at a, 4.5 or 5 cap on your underwriting, which is nowhere near the case now because interest rates are north of that. Even treasuries are like, I think they might even be above 5% now. So why would anyone buy your C-class 1960s building for a 4 cap, 4.25 cap or whatever you underwrote it for at that period of time? So you have 2 markers for how you make money. Basically, you can increase the cash flow you have, or you have like cap rate reduction, right? So most people that are syndicating, they're pushing NOI because market rent kept going up, but they might not be able to perform to get that market rent that they were underwriting for because 3% of your revenue is a substantial portion of your cash on cash, right? Cash on cash is based on your down payment of the purchase, whereas your revenue is a much higher proportion of that. So if you double your revenue, you're going to more than double your cash on cash, if that makes sense, right? That's typically how it works. Yeah. Because you're leveraged at whatever number.
40%, 35%,
yeah.
whatever.
If you don't meet that, even if you bought if you don't meet that, then you're kind of stuck in this position where like you aren't able to push the rents that you needed and the market's falling and not as many people are now buying after you. So even when you try to exit and sell because, for example, you didn't buy a rate cap, then you need to take outside private equity capital, these rescue vulture funds, which basically give you disgusting terms and will wipe out all of your investors, or you try to sell it on the market.
Or you do a capital call, which is
just as bad.
Yeah.
And so now you're stuck with 3 very unenviable options. And most people I've heard, like at least what I've been hearing through the WordWorks, they've already gone through 1 capital call.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And if the market keeps getting worse, which I believe it will in Q3, Q4, they're not going to get a second capital call to come through. Yeah. So that means they're going to be forced to either sell or take private investor capital. Now, private investor capital, you only get usually 6 months, 12 months to buy your way out of it or raise more money to like buy out.
Like buy some more time.
Buy some more time for yourself.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, then that's just another 6 months to 12 months. And so 2023, late 2023, 2024, they've already started taking this. That means you're pretty much left with trying to sell it. And so if you're forced to sell and then everyone else is forced to sell at the same time because you can't get a bridge loan at the right valuation that you want, then you're going to see a flood of supply come back online. Yeah. Now, the problem is you're trying to sell your C-class building that you underwrote for 5%, hypothetically. Let's say like 5% on exit. Treasuries are now north of 5%.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole bunch of new Class A buildings coming online as well.
Yeah.
How are you going to get anywhere near 5% cap rate on your exit? Right? So it ends up being a scenario where I think most people are going to get wiped out on their investor equity. Hopefully they'll come out above that. But the other thing that's happened, at least that I'm seeing, is in the market downturn, there's a lot more people who can't pay anymore for rent. So luckily we got out of our situation in Florida. We had like 10% delinquency at one point on our tenants.
Okay.
But that was over the holidays, and we've cleared most of that up since the new year. But
would you do like concession or?
No delinquency. They were just late on rent.
Okay.
Right. And so we had to evict a few, and then a few we worked with. But the majority of them caught up because the holiday season is usually like a rough time for finding work and et cetera. So that being said, that's the main reason why I see most syndicators that bought in at least the hot markets are going to have a really tough time. There's one group in particular in Austin that I'm going after, and then one that I'm trying to buy from in Vegas as well, who owns a lot of buildings in Phoenix. I'm not the first person. I don't want to name them, but if you are a syndicator in the space, you'll know about them because they exploded in the last like 2-3 years. And everyone's kind of been eyeballing their portfolio because every project they did, 25% down, bridge debt. Hopefully they got caps on some of them. But, for the ones that didn't get caps on, they're in a really tough situation because they all bought at like 3-4 cap, expecting to exit at a 5. Yeah. And on top of that, they always did 1 to 5 million hard money day one, which means they had almost no negotiation room against the seller. And so you have a bunch of California, New York investors who aren't really paying attention. They're just like, oh, I want a piece of this. This group already has
they have liquid
2,000 units or something. So take the money, right?
Yeah. I think that was the problem with another project that we looked at in Arizona too. I think the syndication.
Yes. Yeah.
You know exactly who I'm talking about.
So.
And so I was like, be careful, like look at their history and then how they scaled so fast.
Correct.
And like, here's what happened. And then when I actually looked into it and did my own DD, I was like, oh yeah, I can't go into this project because like their, I guess their values on how they want to scale their business that fast, like doesn't align with mine and like how I'm really conservative in my investment strategies. Yeah. And I was just like, the number sounds really cool, but I don't believe in like first month distribution taken from a different space, right?
Pretty much. And if you've played around with those like underwriting Excel sheets, you'll know like the easiest way to get a really high IR return is you change either the exit cap rate or you change the first 1 or 2 years of rent growth projections. And so people will try to justify like a 5%, I saw a project, for example, in Corpus Christi. Someone was like, hey, do you want to help raise for this? And at this point, I'm not really partnering with new people. But I was like, yeah, let me take a crack at it just to see what they're underwriting. I was like, you guys have 5% rent increase back-to-back years, but I hope you know this. Houston rent is like flatlined for the last 6 months. Yeah. It's probably going to trend negative in the coming year, especially if oil prices start coming down. So it's sound like Mickey Mouse right now.
I think he's in puberty.
Yeah. So if you want to invest in cap rates at 14%,
this is the uptrend.
This is the uptrend of the market cycle. And if we look at the Federal Reserve's returns, treasury yields aren't where they used to be. So,
oh my God, I'm done, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't think people see what we have to do day by day looking at the Excel sheets and sevens.
Yeah. And so, but that's the easiest way to game the numbers. It's really hard to lie about a T12. It's really hard to lie about a, like most people like that are syndicators, they're not going to really lie about stuff. Yeah. They just want to really perform because they're like me. They want validation. They want to be felt like that they're safe for people to work with. And so when they do those underwritings to get a high number, it almost looks ridiculous if you have done underwriting before. Yeah. But they're working on projections of what has the past 2 years looked like rather than what does the past 10 years look like. And, if they bought in 2021, they were probably still right. Yeah. If they bought in 2022, tough tough.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my spiel on it. But
yeah, I like how you tied it to the external validation too, because like, yeah, like syndicators do want to hit projections, then they do want to pay their LPs. But at the same time, like a lot of that kind of stems from like this fear of like not being good enough, right? Because like once that's out there, once the OM is out there, it's just kind of like you're tying your credibility to that, and like you're accountable for those projections. And it's not just like, hey, I can give you whatever X returns, because that's another thing that I see circling social media a lot is like, hey, invest with me and I'll get you 10% on your money or whatever, right? Which is like literally like one of my cringy is like, I don't know, like I don't not saying it's from a legal matter, of course, because we all have SEC lawyers and all that stuff, but I don't think people that are consuming content kind of understands the message really behind that, right? Going from like a single flip versus going to a syndication, and how that 10% like really differs. Like where you're putting your $100,000 in here versus here, it's like, yes, you want the returns and all that stuff, but like, how do you feel about that? Like the trend on social media of people openly putting it out there, like invest with me to get 10% back.
I mean, it's a hard one to answer. There are companies that are doing it the right way, right? If you do a Reg A filing, that's kind of what it's always been. And the problem is, like you said, a lot of people don't understand what they're actually investing in, which makes it kind of scarier. And so education is a big key part of it. But if you're the 80% of your dumb video content that goes viral, for example, is what you care about, because that gets the most eyeballs, very few people might actually get to the point where they're looking at the 20% of like, here's actually the base and meat and the bones and all the important things that you should know before you invest, because you might only know that one person from looking at their video. That being said, it's really hard to teach people how to properly vet without someone in their space that can be in their corner to vet, to like support them. And the easiest way to do that is actually to ask one syndicator that what their opinions are of another syndicator. I've noticed.
Okay.
Because then you'll get them to start competing against each other and start being more honest about this other person's performance. And the more that you actually end up knowing, the more likely you are to get enough knowledge and information to like figure out where should I place capital. The hardest part is, how do you find this many syndicators? And so one company we work with, for example, Cash Flow Portal, they sponsor a couple of our events, but they're trying to create a marketplace for people to talk to several syndicators, so that way they're not stuck knowing only one person that could be nickel and diming them for different results. Now, the other problem with that is, even people who know syndications don't really understand how it really works when it comes to actual execution. So, for example, some people offer only 15-85% GP-LP split. You're like, well, that's great terms for me as an LP. I get 85% of the project. And then I look at another project and they're like, why is this person asking for 40% of the returns? How's that even, fair compared to this guy's only 15? Well, you look at their track record, right? I worked with this guy, Sam Kumar. He runs this company called Journeyman Construction. They're the second biggest developer in Austin. He's been building for 30 years. His average return over the last decade for investors has been 35% annually. He takes a 40% cut of every deal.
That's fair.
And so if you look at it, yes, I'm getting a smaller slice of the pie, but it's a much bigger pie than some syndicators I've met who, for example, only take 18% slice of the pie. But they're going to grossly underperform because it's already starting to happen, because it's their first deal. So they want to be as fair as possible and to look as good as possible when investing. And I've gotten pushback before, and I'm like, yes, you can push back, I understand, but you also don't know what you're talking about, because you haven't invested enough as an LP in other projects to see that the GP-LP split doesn't matter as much as where your market is, how this person performs historically and will perform, right? That operator is key in downturns and in good times. And of course, what is the actual deal that you're investing in? And for example, one of my most one of the deals that I actually enjoy investing in the most, the ones that I've been trying to fund recently, are affordable housing tax credit programs. The low income portion of it is that is usually like 60% of the area median income. So if you make less than 60% of the area income, you're considered now low income, according to HUD and whatever federal tax authority that controls these grants are. 51% of the tenants in the building are low income. And working with the US government, we're able to not pay property taxes though, which in Austin, Texas is huge. We're able to cash flow like 5-6% day one because there's no property tax, right? And you still trade at the same cap rate as market rate buildings. And, you know, at the same time, you're providing a specific need that most places really want, which is you need more affordable housing everywhere. And you're doing it for cheaper than the city building their own affordable housing project. And because it's a mixed use market rate building, you don't have to worry as much about fighting zoning from whatever NIMBY neighbors you might have. And so that's been a way we've been building a lot of housing for people who are really in the most need. But from the investor perspective, you don't have any surprise property tax hits. People always need affordable housing. So you get the same, you know, lower risk that you would from, say, a C-class building, because you're always going to have tenants when people downgrade.
And they can actually afford.
And they can actually afford it. And at the same time, 60% of the area median income in Austin, that's like $65,000 a year. That's teachers. That's firefighters. That's policemen. That's basically the middle class, which is kind of messed up that that's considered low income now. But it's not the same as, say, doing specifically Section 8 tenants, which you know typically are rougher, et cetera, and whatever perspective you might have of Section 8 tenants. This is pretty much middle class tenants that you're just trying to provide housing for. And you get a huge tax break just to build something that the city and the people really need. And so that to me is what I care about the most. You know?
I like that. I like that you're solving problems that the government can't really do anything about. They're saying
we're working with the government on it. You know, and
you're like, here's a solution.
Here's a solution. And you know, you just give us a tax break. We will find the private capital from investors. And a lot of investors don't know about it because they're all used to value add multifamily buildings, because that's all that people pitch. That's the 80% of the dumb content that we have to send out, because that's what people understand. When I have to go through and explain to them the grant system, working with HUD, that we have fixed rate construction loans for 5 years, you know, that, you know, becomes a stabilized loan, and how great the terms are, that's going to take forever for me to like boil down into short form content. Right. But you get outsized returns and outsized risk protection versus a market rate building. Because you know who's going to get screwed right now? It's the luxury new developers who are like, oh, I got to put 2-3 months of concessions now in order to fill up my building. Right. Like
200-300 units.
Yeah, the 200 ones.
All the amenities in the world.
Amenities,
people can't fucking afford it.
They can't afford it.
Can't afford it.
So and so those are the people at the most risk, because you have to think of it from a perspective of like Class A, Class B, Class C, right? Rent has actually never collapsed in value, but Class A does come down. Class C, you'll have more delinquencies. And so even though you'll always have tenants, you have to worry about the turnover risk and the cost of the turnover per unit. And so it's really hard, because once you get to the nuances of it, everything makes sense, right? It's almost like junk bonds versus grade A bonds. The nicer your building is, like the lower in value it's going to fall when times are rough. But the slower it appreciates when times are good also. Whereas your rough dirt buildings in like the worst neighborhoods, they appreciate the fastest. Like percentage wise. And a lot of people don't understand that there's like a trade-off between the two, but they also collapse the most in value once the market turns.
So I'm curious, like, you know, when you're capital raising all of these tax credit, because you said not a lot of investors, especially LPs, are aware of, right? Like, what kind of persona do you feel like your personality is? Because, like, you know, when we first met or whatever, you're like, I'm a comedian and this is what I used to do or whatever. Like, how much of that? Because I know that people don't really invest in your business model, especially if they don't understand it, but they'll invest with you because they trust you, they like you, you are credible in whatever way, shape, or form that you know, like present yourself as. So when you go out capital raising, like, where do you think your biggest strengths are in terms of connecting with them?
definitely I have two things going for me. One is, like you said, I'm personable. Hopefully.
Hopefully, that's why we're still friends.
We're still friends. So,
We're still friends.
yeah,
We're doing some stupid shit.
yeah. Hopefully, I can come off as relatable as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are really the things that I kind of try to tune in on. But it depends on who I'm talking to, right? Individual, small investors. It's like it's really just around how can I identify with your story and how can I give you mine, right? I got a mom, came here undocumented, pretty much raised by her entirely. First generation, go to college, the whole nine. And then there's a period of time where I was like, what am I going to do with this money now? I want to buy a house. I don't have a rich uncle I can just ask. Everyone I know is just like, oh, you just buy the house and do it yourself, and fix it up. That's what I did. I went and I built and I fixed my first property, and I was like making mistakes here and there along the way. But I had to sit there and think about, how did someone else get all the leg ups? How did they figure out what to do without some rich uncle that was backing them? And
some sort of guidance or something.
Sort of guidance to make sure you're not making huge mistakes. And I got really lucky all along the way, meeting those people who would step in to mentor me, to say like, hey, actually, you're going to make a huge mistake here. And a lot of it came down to just me saying, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm dumb. Please come help me. And I want to portray that as something that's more virtuous than people would think, because I want the people who don't know what they're doing to ask me the same questions that I can step in for them.
Yeah.
Right. And being a comic really helps with that, because as an empath, I can sort of sense out where their head is at in terms of how they want to be treated, how they want to feel, because I was at that one point, right? I was also
feel stupid for asking that question.
Yeah, I feel stupid for asking questions all the time, right? And so those are the key things that when I talk to people, I'm trying to explain, like, I was like you, and the only difference is I am in my late 20s with no kids, and I can take this risk unlike other people, right? And that I have hunger for something bigger than just working at a W-2 to just kind of coast. And if that's what you want to do, even better. But let me help you along the way. If you want to buy something, if you want to invest in something, I'm happy to take your money. But my first step is actually getting you to buy your own property first. That's kind of what Sarah is.
Yeah.
And I feel like
0 to 1.
0 to 1.
Yeah.
And funny fact, you end up actually creating more goodwill and generating more value by telling people, don't give me your money, buy your first one. Here's a whole guide. There's a whole community built around this. And if you realize, actually, I hate toilets, I hate tenants, I don't want to ever do this again, I'm happy to take your money at some point, right?
Yep.
And so that actually has grown faster than I ever thought it would, because in my head, anytime you are extracting value for revenue, you lose a lot of the goodwill that you're trying to build.
Yeah.
When I'm creating community, when I'm talking with people, there's always two banks in my head of how I'm going to profit or whatnot off of you, or if I'm going to connect off of you. Goodwill grows 2-3 times faster. There's a bank of goodwill that if you are providing really good value, the people that are receiving it are going to tell 2 or 3 of their friends, and it's going to grow significantly faster. Revenue grows much slower. And every time you try to garnish revenue, ostensibly, like just throw in their face, like, hey, I'm selling a class, join my mastermind, whatever it is, you're actually garnishing the goodwill that you've created.
Yeah.
Because then they're like, oh, this person's trying to make a sale, et cetera. It kind of kills a lot of that interaction you would otherwise have. And so for me, I am trying to figure out, how do I keep building goodwill? Because I make enough money from real estate. My goodwill is something that I am trying to protect. And that's how I manage and think of my community and all the people in it, which is, how do I keep providing a service that people are going to keep telling other people about that I am doing. And that has given me significantly better returns than trying to say, buy my class for $200, join my mastermind for $10,000 a month or something. And I get that some people need to monetize earlier because they haven't achieved it yet.
From real estate
real estate yet. But I didn't want to monetize there. I actually want to make money from real estate. That matters more to me than necessarily like
making money from people.
Making money from like an education course, which a lot of people have done recently. And so when I think of the math that I am doing for the community and whatever it is I'm trying to make money from, the skill set that I'm trying to employ is, can I be identifiable as a friend? Can I be identifiable as somebody in a community that you can trust? Because otherwise, I'm just a 28-year-old trying to build a business. Thank you. Yeah. I know it's the
it's like, Botox. How long have we been friends? I'm like, I don't know.
It's the Botox. It's hard to tell.
It's the Asian genes.
It's the Asian genes,
it's the fucking genetics.
So that's one way. Yeah. That's one of my skill sets. The other skill set, and at least the benefit that I've gotten, is I'm pretty lucky to have gotten a solid pedigree background. So, for example, if I'm talking to someone who's high level at, say, a fund or a family office, then I'll say, hi, I'm Nelson, graduated Columbia with engineering degree, and I worked for Apple, I worked for Microsoft. I've won international engineering competitions back when I was in college, and a slew of other things where I've been awarded by California State and Assembly. And so that makes it easy for me to present that, hey, I might be young, but I have a huge track record. If you want a successful Asian kid to like represent you, I am here. I'm hungry. I have no kids. I have no dependents. All I can do is make you more money, right? So that's my other way that I pitch. It depends on who I'm talking to, because when I mention the other part, it makes me less relatable. Yeah. Right? No one wants to hear some Ivy League kid working at a bunch of FANG companies. Yeah. But if I am the son of immigrants who grew up in the back of a restaurant, who was a child laborer until he was 18, that is much more relatable and much more of a story that we can talk about, because that to me is more important, is like our shared identities. Yeah. That's what the community is for. That's the people who want to work with me usually care about. But if I'm talking to a hedge fund, then I have to mention like, hey, actually I consult for an even larger hedge fund than you, Brookfield, if you ever heard of it. And so I do machine learning and data science for them. So like any version of analysis, data, I'm very competent in that space because, between you and like two other hedge funds that I'm consulting for, I have a pretty good idea of where the market is. Yeah. Those two are not always,
it's not synonymous.
It's not synonymous.
It's not.
It just depends on who I am talking to and how do I code switch so that I can convince you that I'm someone that you should work with. Yeah, because our relatable space is like the immigrant. We love memes. We're funny as fuck. We're funny. I hope we're funny as fuck. We use laughter as a defense mechanism to any real feelings from the world. We suffer from severe childhood trauma. Gang. That is not projecting into the world of real estate and connecting with others through, I feel like more purposeful, like pain sharing stories is where the enlightenment is, because everyone kind of comes into the space. They're like, network, bring value. And I'm like, okay, like what kind of value? Like if you're not really acting out of a place of pure generosity and like altruism, right? Because at the end of the day, you're still doing it to seek validation in whatever way, shape, or form from whatever that fulfills you, right? Whether you want to hear like, oh, you're so successful, you make so much money. And I'm pretty sure that's how, I don't know how you vet your girls. Is there like an underwriting process? There is. I have a spreadsheet actually. Funny enough. Shut up. No, I do. Okay, so can you share your spreadsheet? Yeah, I'll share it later. But basically, the reason I have a spreadsheet is because I am a man and incredibly dumb. I have a horrible time discerning, do I like this person or do I just really find them attractive? Okay. And so the spreadsheet is a way for me to gather enough information to make the decision quicker. Because looks fade, and that's a very natural process. So like, I want to be with someone that I care about a lot. And I want to be with somebody that I can really zone in on as a partner. And so I have a spreadsheet, I grade them, but it's not like a grading of physical characteristics. It's all like personality based, right? And I know some people hate it because they're like, how dare you turn people into a number. it's not like the highest number is the best.
Yeah.
All I did was I looked at, there's a data science and machine learning sort of concept of like, you don't want to just look at future people without looking at the past. I am just taking past experiences and extrapolating data from them in order to figure out maybe who might be better in the future. So for me, what I know for sure is the number, it doesn't have to be the highest. It just has to be above a certain benchmark.
Okay. Like C's get degrees or?
Yeah, like
C's
a B-
or something?
Because what I did was I looked at the past and I was like, those two girls actually hated being with them. But they were really hot and I ignored it entirely in the period of the time that I was with them, That's as honest as it comes, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's people who I've dated now that, one of them's a Twitch streamer, she's making money from that. And other people who've like really, who like ostensibly are very attractive, but also I know that it took me like 3 to 6 months to be like, actually, I don't think we were a good fit. And the Excel sheet is a very quick way to say, like, actually, I don't think we're going to work out long term, and I don't want to waste your time. Because this way we can figure out very quickly, like, we probably don't work that well together. And obviously, it's a holistic approach. I'm not going to just say, like, I can't like measure somebody right off the bat and say, like, yeah, you're done here.
Yeah.
I still need to go on like a second, third date to get to know them. And honestly, most people already do that. They just have it in their heads. I just do it on an Excel sheet.
Okay.
And the numbers don't actually matter. The term in statistics is like, it's more of a Bayesian approach where it's just a guide. It's an estimation. And I can look at an estimation because when I look at say girlfriend number 3 and girlfriend number 5 in the past, I really like 3, but why is her score lower than number 5? So then I can look at my features and say, like, actually, I cared a lot more about people who are driven to be open-minded and grow themselves. Yeah. So that feature, that number
like
is actually, that category is actually more important than I thought. Raise that number. And then maybe I actually don't care as much about if she's able to speak Mandarin or not. And it looks like I can reduce that, for example. Yeah. So just the question of, it's a question of like, what do you actually care about? And that was all it was. I got drunk like a few years ago and I was just like, I'm just going to write this down for fun. And it's been a really good talking point because there's some people who absolutely hate me because they're like, how do you do a spreadsheet for people? How dare you? But I'm also like, it's just a spreadsheet for me. You don't have to do it. I'm just trying to save myself time because I'm too dumb to discern, do I just find this person hot or are we actually a good fit for each other?
Yeah. Because it kind of goes past the physical attraction and chemistry and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because it has to be
and I don't think it even
core
goes
values too.
Past chemistry. I think chemistry is a big part of it. All I'm doing is trying to figure out how do I measure chemistry between somebody? Because sometimes I confuse because instead of actual chemistry, I am just attracted to them, right?
You're like, am I just horny?
Am I just horny or am I actually clicking with this person? And it's hard because I'm so charming and funny, right? It's so difficult. Charming. To like figure out, are we having a good time or am I just a good time on my own? And you just happen to be an accessory to my enjoyment.
Yeah, I think most people overlook that because they're looking for an addition to themselves.
Correct.
When they don't really realize like they should come as a whole to begin with.
Yes.
And they're measuring other people on their scale, right? But they're not really bringing the same level either.
Yeah.
Because they're expecting like all of these
someone
other
higher,
things.
right? Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's hilarious.
Yeah.
No, I find the spreadsheet fascinating. I actually really want to see it.
Yeah, we can go over it.
Yeah. I'm like, what happened here? Like, what?
Yeah.
So where does like the healing journey kind of factor into how that sets like person A and person B apart if they're working on themselves? Because you said like you prioritize someone that's working on their growth, being open-minded and stuff, right? And that kind of takes a lot of like self-work and self-love to bring that into a relationship. So how important is that for you?
It's a deal breaker.
Deal breaker?
Yeah. It's, I have only 4 deal breakers really. And they're somewhat narcissistic because they're things that I try to hold in my life. But I feel like 4 deal breakers is not that much, and they're not even physical. I know some people are like 6 foot minimum, right? 250K.
Gotta be tall.
Gotta be tall, and then just like I don't necessarily think that that's the best way to vet out if I'm interested in somebody. But I would want someone who's like filterlessly open-minded, for example.
Yeah,
I want someone comfortable who doesn't have to like mince their words around me and other people. Why? Because that's a really important part of eventually growing together. If they're not going to work on themselves later on down the line, it makes it harder to even think about, can we even have a conversation that's constructive later on about building a life together?
Yeah.
If they're trying to be avoidant with it constantly and not trying to face the music, then that kind of makes it very difficult for me to be attracted to that. And to think that, we can actually grow together. Another thing that I think is really important is is like humor. Like, can I laugh around them? Can they laugh around me? And, that's a huge aspect around it, because I've met girls where I have to explain the joke to them, and I'm like,
oh my God. Yeah. That is so painful.
It's painful, but also it was like, that's why she scored 200 out of like 1,400,
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the 4 deal breakers?
So, and then a third one that's really important is being frugal for me. Because lifestyle, you want to match your partners financially. That's the number one reason for most divorces is finances. Yeah. So it's like, if you don't have the same lifestyle and the same mindset, then why would you get with somebody, right? So again, these are still not physical features. These are just, how does this person want to live their life? And will it be a way for us to like be a good pair? Yeah. And I know for me, growing up with, a mom and our to-go restaurant in the back of a Chinese restaurant, I'm very cognizant of how the money is spent. I'm pretty cognizant of how debt should be added. And so I am very worried that if I were to be with a partner who doesn't think about that, it'll 100% get in the way of our lifestyle and the way I want to live with this partner, and maybe even teach the kids, how to live. Yeah. And so those are things that I am really worried about. And the fourth is blowjobs. Fourth is blowjob.
Shut the fuck.
It actually comes down to chemistry sexually.
Okay,
overall.
That's important.
Not blowjobs, but it's like a funny one-word explanation of it. It's just like, no blowjobs. All right, no. I think chemistry is a big part of it. Yeah. It matters a lot to me. I think it's also an issue because I have my insecurities. And so for me, validation and sex are often very much associated. And so having a partner that ideally can keep up is sometimes harder than not. Yeah. And then, that plays into the way I feel about myself. And if you want to be with someone forever, ideally, I don't want those ideas and thoughts to creep up. Yeah. I have a friend recently who suffers from the same thing. She mentioned cheating on her now husband, several times. And I'm like, I would never want to put someone else in that position. Yeah. And so ideally, is there a way that I can not feel insecure? Obviously, this is just me and my own mental issues. Everyone else has their own way to resolve it. But specifically just for me, it's like, how can I resolve this in a way that I think is hopefully healthy and sustainable? And that's my main concern, is like, if I have a partner that I don't really have that much sexual chemistry with, I can see myself very easily veering off and thinking about other people, and I don't want that to be an onus on whatever partnership that I ended up being in.
Yeah, because that sucks to have that regret later in life. Like, how did I get here? When knowing from the beginning initially,
that we weren't really that,
and you're just trying to brush it off the rug, trying to make excuses for it,
right?
When there's really And
so the reason I say these are deal breakers are because these are things that I've broken up with people over in the past. And the reason I also know that there's like a base level number of ones that really worked out was because I might have broken up with them because logistics usually. Like, hey, I moved to a different city, different timing. But if we had the right timing, I would probably stayed with them. We probably would have been together still. And I was like, there's 3-4 people in particular that really like went above and beyond like a certain number. And I was like, and I really like being with them. I really, wish I could have still been with them, but for whatever reason, now there was someone else or whatever whatever issues came down the line logistically, I am, I don't want to like, the thing is also, it's like, if I wanted to step in and try to ruin the relationship, you could, but I also don't want to do that either.
You don't want to be a homewrecker?
I don't want to be a homewrecker.
I don't want to be like, hey, my homie needs a homewrecker.
Yeah. But also, I also know that these are people that I still value and I keep in my life though, and I don't need to be with them, but they are also a reminder that, of like the people that I like being with that I could have probably still been with had it not been for whatever thing that happened. Because that's a problem with trying to be hungry and driven. You move around every 2 years for school, work, job, opportunity. And so it's hard to settle into your roots when you're constantly looking for this next big thing.
Yeah. So do you think that you're still finding those qualities or values in people now?
Those
like
people
you're
now?
looking for like the next time you're dating someone, like do you find yourself looking for the similar qualities?
Yeah.
So is that like comparative or?
It's comparative, but it's really like the 4 deal breakers are the big ones. Everything else is just kind of like, I just added up for fun, and
blowjobs.
No, I did, I've gone on dates and I've been trying to like end them faster because I'm like, actually, I think financially our goals are not aligned. And, that's an easy way for me to say like, I don't think this is gonna work out long term. I think people prefer to hear an answer rather than just be ghosted or figure out why they don't.
Or string along for a very
long time.
For like no particular reason. Exactly. Because they're lonely.
Yeah, because they're lonely.
Yeah.
What am I, like 18? I don't need to do that anymore. Yes.
Like, I have plenty of friends.
Yeah. And so I think people prefer it more if you are upfront with them about the reasons why it might not work. And I usually don't show them the spreadsheet or tell them about it. And so I try to use that as like a
back end operations.
Like a back end of the operations. Yeah. They only see the IRR on the.
This is fucking hilarious.
Yeah. So.
Okay, when we get back home, you're showing me the spreadsheet.
We're gonna go with the spreadsheet.
Do you have like matching pictures too? Like, do you keep data of like pictures?
No, just an Excel sheet. That's a different spreadsheet.
Oh, okay, gotcha. That's the hidden folder in your phone.
It's a hidden folder.
Okay.
Nah, I don't keep nudes. Anyway. I don't know. No, that's too sus.
Nudes.
Yeah.
That is so funny. What's something that you wish someone would ask you that you've never really been asked?
I don't know. I feel like I've been asked so many questions.
Yeah.
It's really hard not to like answer them all. And yeah, I feel like I usually don't hold back on things that I say. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I think moving forward with the intention of not staying in that relationship or developing that relationship takes a lot more courage and like respect than just
yeah.
I don't know if that's a reputation thing because you don't want to be that guy either, right?
Yeah, of course.
Because if you were, I should say, like being highlighted, on a television show, and all these girls like, I know him, like I went on a date with him, he never called me again, like that motherfucker.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess for me, one question I don't get asked a lot is, what is it that you actually want to do once you have all the money that you need? I'm trying to retire before 30. I got 2 more years left. Yeah. I think I'm well on track for that. So then no one really figures out like what is the important thing afterwards. Like what's the point of having 200, 400, 1,000 units if you're going to do nothing but like cash flow, right?
Yeah. I remember that conversation. Remember we were driving?
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you want to do after all of this like empire building and all that stuff? You're like, I'm probably going to go back and be a stand-up comedian.
Stand-up comic, yeah.
And it was fucking hilarious.
Yeah, I'm going to tell dick jokes. That's my...
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, dick jokes during the day and then, or at night, and then during the day, I was going to... Dick pics.
Dick pics during the day, dick jokes at night.
Yeah. I wanted to get back into the green tech space or the affordable housing space. I'm already funding projects around them. Right? I'm trying to figure out my maneuvering back into it because what's my superpower? I find money. I underwrite. I can do math.
Mm-hmm.
So back in school, I was doing a lot of research on green, energy efficient ways to basically funnel the money. The project was funded by the Breakthrough Energy Ventures. I don't know if you heard of it, but they're like $1 billion fund. Their focus was like, how do we put money towards projects to make them as efficient at removing carbon emissions as possible? And so, that's something I cared a lot about. I don't necessarily support the idea of like reducing use, because you're not going to change humans by reducing their use. I actually really want to create a product that just reduces it by being better. And just so happens that that's an offset of the effect. Example, electric cars, right? Electric cars started as a subsidy. They don't really, they still have some now, but they kind of can stand on their own legs. They're obviously not all the way there because it's a very capital intensive industry that needs a long lead time for energy and research to make it better. But I guarantee you, people who love cars, they're buying Teslas because as an electric car, instant torque, massive horsepower, so you can accelerate much faster, lower maintenance requirements, don't have to pay gas, So there's a lot of benefits associated with just electric cars, and you just have to solve a few problems around range and whatnot. That now you have a product that's scalable that you can sell that's better than the existing product at hand. And a lot of people don't think of it that way because they're still angry about like, subsidies or this or that. You have a bunch of subsidies for oil too. I don't know if people know this. Why? How do I know this? Because I know people who raise money for oil talking about the tax breaks that you get investing in oil and gas wells, because the government wants to support general energy usage across the whole and, protection.
I have an oil deal in my email if you want to look at it.
I get 4 of those a day,
Yeah, right.
And so it's like, okay, you also get subsidized in oil.
Yeah.
You also get subsidies in, green cars. You can do both.
Yeah.
And the idea is that I want to create a product that's better than what exists to convince people to join over towards it. Obviously, it's going to likely fall somewhere in the housing space. And hopefully I can make it cheap enough where it can also solve affordable housing issues. But it's going to come down to some version of probably modular homes and making that more scalable. But that's kind of my end goal at some point, is make a product that's better than what currently exists, hopefully for cheaper at some point. But maybe you have to start the luxury high-end version and slowly work your way down as the technology progresses and gets cheaper. And now that I have a cash nest from real estate, I can kind of work towards it without worrying about losing everything and then going broke. And, dying
broke.
So,
that's the right word.
Yeah. And so to me, those are the things that I care about. Those are the things that I am drawn towards and I feel like I am put on this earth to create a bigger impact for. So.
Wow, that was so powerful.
Thank you.
Mickey Mouse.
Mickey Mouse.
Dude, I could talk to you all day, but Oh yeah, but before that, hey, I just want to acknowledge you for your time and your presence being here today.
Of course.
It's like so powerful that we're in the same space together and things are just aligning. Because we've been talking about like, hey, let's do something together, but what is it, right? What is it? Like, you're never here. I'm never in Austin. And I feel like this conversation could keep going. It probably will, like, throughout the day when we hang out more. But what's like one message that you want to just leave with today?
Find out why you're doing what you're doing. I think that's a big one. A lot of people don't know. You know how many people I talk to that are like, when I say like, when you have all the money in the world, what are you going to do with it? I'm going to travel.
You can do that now.
You can do that now.
Yeah.
Right? Why aren't you doing it now? You were working remote for 2 years. You didn't travel that much. And it's like the people who want to travel, when you ask them why, 90% of them pick it because that's what they hear other people want to do. They don't actually care about it themselves. And when they do it, they'll probably do it for a year and then they'll sit there figuring out, what do I want to do with the rest of my life?
Yeah.
I've met a couple of people like that now who were generally successful entrepreneurs that got their FIRE retirement money that they needed. And then they are now stuck in a position of like, what is my purpose? What do I want to do? Who do I want to become? And travel was their initial purpose, but it wasn't their purpose. It was a purpose. Yeah, or the money. Purpose was what they thought they wanted based on what they saw what other people wanted. And so I am hungry because I want to tackle a big problem, something worthwhile that I think can make a difference at some point. And a lot of it doesn't actually come from value adding apartment complexes. You know what most value add is? They add paint, new cabinets, $300 more in rent. Did you actually create value? Did you create new housing? No, you just arbitrage value from the existing owner who didn't know what the value might have been or didn't have the capital for it.
Yeah.
And so you're an opportunist that is arbitraging value. You're not creating anything new. At least with a developer, you're producing new units. Even in Chicago, when we were doing value add, we were buying them half empty because the last owner was a slumlord who had holes in the ceilings and didn't touch it. And so at least that way I felt like actually I'm providing a value to the community, things that I can do here that will actually benefit the existing tenants and, you know, make the neighborhood hopefully nicer, better, and for all the people who exist.
Yeah, like outside of increasing NOI and reducing expenses, right?
Right. Yeah. Whereas the value add investors you talk to, they're like, oh, we bought in this neighborhood, the building's already 90% occupied, and we just evicted a single mom of 3 because we were able to triple their rent, you know? And they're dancing and like showing off to their investors. At the end of the day, you have to ask, like, what did you actually do? What did you actually create? You know, great, you have 20 investors that got money hand over fist, but you had to, you know, increase the cost of living for 200 people, right? Like, is that really the impact you want to leave on this world? What is the karma that might come from it? Sure, but, you know, even disregarding karma, what is it that you are actually doing? What are you creating? What are you trying to provide for the people that you know, that obviously your constituents are your investors, but, you know, overall, you're doing something that isn't exactly, you're not actually doing something that's helpful or beneficial. Yeah. You're arbitraging value. That's all there is to it, you know?
Yeah. I think that's a really powerful way to put like the responsibilities on syndicators too. And like the way you put it was perfectly like kind of like encapsulates like how holistic wealth is supposed to be built too, right? Like outside of looking at money and like how many units and stuff like that. Wow. Goosebumps. Can you see it? So thanks for tuning in today on The Fit and Frugal. My name is Tani Nguyen. You can find me on IG at Tani Soares. And our guest today was Nelson Lin. You can find him at
subtlerealestate.com or subtleassets.com if you want to invest with us. Or you just Google my name, Nelson Lin. I'll be the first thing that pops up. So